Hi, I'm Bella Perez Rubio, Puma Podcast, and you're listening to Teka Teka News. Balitang thinking, hindi breaking. In this episode,
It's a complicated issue, and I think that maybe they have no clear position, and they have to talk to other world leaders to form their position. And we are looking forward very optimistically that before this United Nations General Assembly on the peace formula presented by President Zelensky, this phone call will take place, and we hope that the Republic of Philippines will support it and maybe even find its interest in participating in Ukrainian peace formula.
we walk you through the series of events that led to a so called misunderstanding between the Philippines and Ukraine.
My name is Dennis Mikhailuk. I am Chargé d'Affaires d'interim of the Ukrainian Embassy in Kuala Lumpur. We are also covering the Republic of the Philippines. We do hope that sometime soon there will be a separate embassy established in Manila too, but as of now, we are responsible for the bilateral.
On January 11, Mikhailuk was quoted by various Philippine media as saying during a press con that he's been trying to schedule a call with President Marcos but hadn't heard back since June. The articles go on to say that the Ukrainian embassy had made multiple follow ups since then. That slew of coverage made it sound like the DFA had been ignoring the request, to which it took offense.
First of all, we don't really appreciate when these things are done.
That's Foreign Affairs Undersecretary Carlos Serreta.
Ukraine is a country we have a good relationship with, but when matters like these are vented by representatives of another government through the press, it's not something that we appreciate.
He said there's a whole process to these things. There are pre-discussions, there are pre-arranged talking points, etc. A few days later, the Ukrainian official apologized. He now claims the Philippine media took him out of context.
Unfortunately, I'm not very well aware that the Filipinos press, they just take away this one phrase out of the contents and use it as the main topic for the briefing was to inform the public about the 10 steps for peace formula of the President Zelensky, which was introduced on the G20 summit in November and will be discussed sometime soon in the United Nations General Assembly. While describing this formula, which might be of interest for Filipinos as well, I was asked about the possible improvement of our bilateral relations and named the outstanding request for the phone call between the presidents.
Mikhailuk insists that he wasn't calling out Marcos's office at all.
The fact is the fact, but the way I told it was not perceived by the leadership of the Department of Foreign Affairs. They thought it was an offense. I can assure you that it was not. We are satisfied with the pace of our bilateral relations, and we do hope that this talk between the presidents will happen soon, especially after the comments President Marcos did on his trip to Davos.
While this was playing out in the media, President Marcos was actually in Davos, Switzerland, for the World Economic Forum. When asked about it, he said he was surprised at the reports since the government is happy to support Ukraine.
Well, there was talk of it a couple of months ago, pero wala nang napag-usapan. That's why nagulat kami when the special envoy came out and said na hindi pa sinasagot. Sinagot namin, but couldn't get it scheduled.
But when we spoke on January 19, Mikhailuk said he still hadn't heard back from Marcos's office.
We haven't got any answers yet. It is taking longer than usual, but it's understandable because new administration, there was the transition periods, the visits to the neighboring countries, and during that conference, I've mentioned that we watch it closely and we are happy with the results. President Marcos' visit to China, for example. So it's understandable and can be explained easily.
We'll pause for a quick break now, but when we return, we'll get into why Ukraine wants Philippine support so adamantly.
The improvement we want is on the bilateral stage. Digitalization, for example, both countries have wonderful experience and expertise. and they can enrich one another by sharing this experience. We also can cooperate in energy sphere. Ukraine is one of the countries with the vast expertise in the renewables. They also can cooperate in food security, as Ukraine is one of the few countries who contribute the food to the globe. We are responsible for 10% of the grains worldwide, and this might be interesting for Philippines as well.
Again, that's Denis Mikhailuk, Charge d'Affaires Interim of the Ukrainian Embassy in Kuala Lumpur, which has oversight over Manila too. The Ukrainian official believes there are many areas ripe for collaboration.
Defense cooperation, aerospace cooperation, you just need to mention it. So the bilateral trade was growing very fast before COVID. It's halted now, but we do hope that this trend will be preserved soon, and not after the war, but already during the war, we can boost our trade, especially in the commodities.
If it's so advantageous to strengthen bilateral ties with Ukraine, why hasn't it happened yet?
I would say that for majority of Asian countries, Ukraine is not on the radar. But it was before the war. Since the beginning of the war, the situation changed dramatically because not for the good reason, but Ukraine is in the center of world politics now.
And if the diplomatic episode that's played out over recent weeks has proven anything, it's that we're definitely on Ukraine's radar.
A country of 100 million people, one of the biggest in the region, very important member of ASEAN, the union in Asia, which is the fastest growth in economy, which is on the other, fragile region of the world. One is Europe, and the other one is the Asia Pacific. The interests of many countries collide, and there are different clashes between the groups of interests. The Philippines is not a small country and a very important one.
Despite the physical distance between our two countries, Mikhailuk says we have plenty in common. And there are lessons Filipinos can learn from Ukraine.
I think this is the heritage of the colonial past. We had that as well in Ukraine, and lots of people thought of ourselves as the minor country, which is not as important. And actually, it was one of the reasons why we didn't believe that the war of that scale might happen in our territories. We didn't believe it's so important for anyone to just wage a war and to be disturbed by our decisions or by our political inclinations. The same as the Philippines. And just take into consideration the example of my country. We are between the major blocks in the world, between West and East. We a transit routes between West and East, South and North. We have vast natural resources. We also have transit capabilities. We produce 10% of world's grain. And still, we were not thinking of ourselves as a major player of the world stage.
Although a call with President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine has yet to be scheduled, President Marcos has assured that he's willing to speak with his Ukrainian counterpart.
I have no problem with talking to President Zelensky, especially now that mainit ng gera dun sa kanila. So, of course, we are again on the side of peace, and that remains the same. But any expressions of support that he might feel is needed, we are happy to provide it.
Here's Mr. Denis Mikhailuk again with the final word.
If I could address to the Filipino audience, I would like to thank them for the human attitudes towards the victims of the war in Ukraine. They always feel sympathy from the Filipinos. We would like to express the gratitude and to wish you to live peaceful and prosperous life and never encounter wars on your land. We also would be grateful for any kind of humanitarian support Filipinos can provide to the victims of the war, especially now in the winter.
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka News. Again, I'm Bella Perez Rubio. This episode was produced by Kat Ventura and edited by Mark Casilian. If you like this episode, share it with a friend or two. And don't forget to follow Teka Teka News and Puma Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. At para sa mga mahilig manood sa YouTube, Puma Podcast na rin po kami doon. Just search Puma Podcast and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for listening.